Shackleton's Final Endurance by Chris Casey. Ernest Shackleton was a man who went against the status quo in terms of leadership, yet to his crew he appeared omniscient. Shackleton's courageous characteristics helped save 27 lives, and when times were hard, Shackleton stood tall. The journey took place on a beautiful Norwegian boat called the Endurance. Along the way, the crew was faced with many problems, including stowaways, extreme weather conditions, and ultimately being trapped in the ice. From these problems, emotions brewed, some longing for friends, family, and civilization, and some of appreciation and thankfulness that Shackleton was their leader. Shackleton showed great determination crossing the South Georgia Island by foot, because he did so after making a promise that he would return and save the rest of the crew. Immediately after reaching civilization, Shackleton quickly worked to fulfill his promise by renting boats and setting out towards Elephant Island. Shackleton is remembered as a hero because of his wisdom in times of distress and because of his never-ending dedication to whatever task was at hand. Shackleton began the journey with hope of fame and fortune, but when the Endurance was trapped in an ice floe, Shackleton quickly focused on one thing only: survival. Shackleton's brilliance made him a courageous leader whose unlikely behavior helped save the lives of 27 men. Shackleton's somewhat strange characteristics were explained through Lansing's book, Endurance. Shackleton's unwillingness to succumb to demands of everyday life and his insatiable excitement with unrealistic ventures left him open to accusation of being basically immature and irresponsible. Through his odd personality, Shackleton became a leader. Leaders are people who stand out above the crowd and rise above others in times of need. Authors from the Antarctic Connection website note that school was never a large part of Shackleton's life. His grades were not good only because he did not put any effort into his work. At school, Shackleton was unspeakably bored. As a result, he was usually near the bottom of his form. Shackleton did not always express his true knowledge in school, but as a captain, he may have been one of the most brilliant individuals of all time. The Endurance was a beautiful modern Norwegian ship named after a Shackleton family motto. Shackleton's magnificent boat was described by Lansing as a perfect size. A barkentine, 3 masts, capable of driving at speeds up to 10.2 knots, she measured at 144 feet tall overall, which was not over big, but big enough. Though the Endurance was a very admirable ship, it was unprepared for the hard-packed ice of the Weddell Sea. Shackleton was a man of endurance, and his characteristic is expressed through the name given to his ship, which the authors from the Antarctic Connection explain in one of their many articles. Her original name was Polaris, which Shackleton renamed Endurance after his family motto, Fortitude Vincimus. He hoped that by naming it that, it would give courage to the crew aboard it. Most of the trans-Antarctic expeditions took place on what Shackleton distinguished as sometimes brittle, constantly moving ice floes. Almost immediately, they realized that this was a different sort of ice from any other that they have encountered before. Captain Worsley of the Endurance loved the feeling of breaking through a large ice drift. The enchantment would eventually lead to the destruction of the ship. As the trip progressed, the living conditions grew more difficult, which led to many emotional moments for the crew. When they first set off on the exploration, Shackleton had feelings of pure excitement. Now comes the actual work itself. The fight will be good. Setting out on a dangerous expedition in hope of fame and fortune was what gave Shackleton the feeling of capability at all times. Lansing wrote, "A few days into the voyage and the crew felt prepared for the journey ahead." When no other solution was available, Shackleton and 2 other crew members set off and trekked across South Georgia Island to finally reach civilization. AntarcticConnection.com believes that Shackleton always made do with what he had, as a boy growing up in a middle-class family, and that his family value was seen in his decision to trek across the South Georgia Island. 10 days after landing, they trekked across the mountainous interior of the island. He states in his book, South, "We pushed on somehow." Through multiple tries and determination for saving the rest of the crew, Shackleton returned to rescue the 22 men anxiously awaiting his arrival. Upon reaching civilization, Shackleton had only one thing in mind. Lansing writes that it was to rescue his other 22 men. Shackleton, meanwhile, had arranged for the use of a large wooden whaler, the Southern Sky, in which to return to Elephant Island for the relief of the party there. Though Shackleton did not reach Elephant Island until his third attempt with a Chilean tugboat called the Yelcho, he showed great determination to bring all of his men to safety. Shackleton will be remembered as a hero who led 26 men to safety from the deadliest place in the world. WGBH authors feel that through the Trans-Arctic expedition, Shackleton made himself known both as a leader as well as a hero. As the men on Elephant Island saw a boat in the distance, they fell to their knees and cried tears of joy. It was then that they knew Ernest Shackleton was unlike any other. Shackleton led his crew through dangerous waters, brittle ice, and so many other fatal conditions. The way he did this was through a certain trust that evolved with Shackleton and his crew over time. Shackleton is remembered as a hero, not only because he saved the lives of many, but also standing up in a time when everyone else was afraid of what lay in the near future. As a man, he was intelligent. As a leader, he was different than status quo, but mostly he was a